So this is the Bluboo S3, a phone with a massive 8500 mAh battery, as well as very slim bezels, making this a very attractive looking big battery phone. But does this phone live up to its hype? Let's find out in the full review. Alright, let's check off these things one at a time. First, build quality. The phone here is heavy, as to be expected from an 8500 mAh battery. The back here is made out of plastic, and there's the Bluboo logo on the back. The texture on this is kind of like a stippled texture. It really, I don't want to say bad because it doesn't actually feel too bad, but it does resemble bad feeling plastic, not because the plastic itself is bad, it's because of the stipples that are usually accompany bad feeling plastic, which is why I think it feels bad. It might not feel bad to you, but it definitely doesn't feel great to me. It's more slippery than I thought because the stipples touch your hand, but the indents don't actually, so the effective surface area of your hand touching the actual phone is almost cut by half. So that can be an issue. It's still not as slippery as glass phones though. And on the back, you have a fingerprint sensor that's a little bit small in my opinion. I really wish it was bigger or maybe even rounder. You have a dual camera, so your LED flash, and your Bluboo logo. There's no headphone jack. You do have a USB-C port at the bottom. And let's talk about the bezels. They're actually pretty decent, especially for a big battery phone. I will say that this, compared to let's say a phone like a Redmi 5 Plus, the bezels are actually about the same size, which is very nice, which means that Bluboo actually put some thought into the design. So you don't have a headphone jack, but you do have a USB-C port. Let's talk about the bezels, and they're actually very decent for such a big battery phone. I will say compared to a phone like the Redmi 5 Plus, the bezels on here are about the same as that, but this does have an 8500 mAh battery, which is absolutely massive. And I have to say that Bluboo did a very good job making sure the design looked good. They made sure to kind of add the, the dimensions to the thickness and not to the actual size of the phone. So if you look at the phone from this, from the front like this, and you can't really see how thick it is, it looks like a regular phone. It looks like a regular bezel-less phone with, the bezels are not too small, but they're actually pretty decent. Pretty decent top, pretty decent sides. You do have a black bar running around the screen that's a little bit bigger than usual, but really nothing to complain about. And then where you start seeing your heft is your thickness. This is like 1 centimeter thick at least. And I gotta say that I would much rather have a thick phone with small bezels than a thinner phone with massive bezels, and I think Bluboo did a good job here. All right, so I did talk about the screen a little bit before, but I'll recap here what my thoughts on the screen are. It's a pretty good screen. The maximum brightness is not too great, but in terms of color saturation, it's actually pretty good. As you can see, you'll get some pretty decent greens and blues and whites. And if you look at the next picture, you'll see that even the fall colors look pretty nice. I will say that this is a decent screen. It's of course 1080p, so no complaints here. And this, you can see that there is very good detail. So I will say that this display, really, I have no complaints about it. Actually, you know what? I do have one, and it doesn't relate to how the screen looks, because as you can see, the screen actually looks very, very good. It relates to the touch sensitivity of the actual screen itself. It doesn't actually feel super sensitive, so it's more than usable. I will say that. But if you ghost touch it, kind of like this, sometimes it'll register and sometimes it won't. So that can be an issue if you really don't like that. All right, let's talk about the audio quality. Let's talk about the audio volume first. The volume here is actually decent. It doesn't get super duper loud, but it does get loud enough if you want to use it to listen to stuff. And you can use it in fairly noisy environments. It's just not as loud as, say, phones with great speakers like my Smartest Nut Pro 2 or the Xiaomi Mi Note 3. The audio quality is decent. You do get some decent clarity. There is a little bit of bass, but there really isn't that much to speak of. Let's listen to a clip here to see what it sounds like.
On the battlefront to decide once and for all who shall rule the galaxy.
Unfortunately, in terms of battery life, the phone does get good battery life, but because it has the old MTK 6750 processor, battery life isn't really that great. With an 8500 milliamp hours, I was able to get around 9 to 12 hours of battery life of screen on time story, which really isn't that great. And in terms of standby battery, as you can see, it's okay, but it's really not that great either. I really don't think the battery life here is warranted compared to how big the battery size is, because the MTK 6750 really hampers it. So I think that this phone can get around the same battery life as, for example, a Redmi 5 Plus or Redmi Note 5, but it really cannot get any better. And note that this is a 8500 milliamp hour battery, but the Redmi 5 Plus has a 4000 milliamp hour battery, so this thing is approximately twice as inefficient as the Redmi 5 Plus is Snapdragon 625. And in terms of charging, if you want to charge it, you can charge it up in about 3.5 hours in total. So actually not too bad considering how big the battery is. So let's move on to the software here. Software-wise, this thing comes with Android 7.0. Bluboo did promise 8.0 at launch, but they got some problems, so we'll have to deal with that later. In terms of usage, it's actually fairly smooth. As you can see, I installed Google Now Launcher, and as you can see, it's pretty smooth. There is a little bit of lag, for example, when I swipe from here to the Google Now Launcher. Here, watch this. As you can see, there was a little bit of lag. Watch the top part of the screen. A little bit of lag compared to even my Smartphone Up Pro 2. So where you start seeing a little bit of lag is once you launch apps. As you can see, there's a tiny bit of lag. That's actually pretty fast, but there will be a tiny bit of lag when you launch other things. Even Google Play Newsstand, you can see there was a little bit of hesitation before it actually started. Let's try Photos. That was actually pretty good. And let's try something else. Music. A little bit of hesitation. Well, actually, that was actually pretty long. Longer than usual, actually. So, and Relay, this should be pretty good because it's a pretty light app. And no, it's not. It seems like this phone, the app launch time is pretty temperamental. So it differs based on how often you use it and how when you use it. For example, let me kill all the apps and you'll see that they're actually going to be a little bit different. So if I open Relay, you'll see that that is a little bit faster than before. But I have to say that it's actually better than I was expecting for an MTK 6750, so really no problems here. And of course, you got 4 gigs of RAM, so multitasking is pretty easy. So let's move on to gaming and see what we got. All right, let's take a look at the quality of PUBG on this phone. I have everything set to lowest, and as you can see, the quality is, like, it looks okay. I mean, it's 1080p and whatever. But as you can see, it's pretty laggy. As I'm scrolling around, you'll see that there is a lot of jerkiness. It is playable, I will say, but it's not like it's not going to be a great experience. Let's land and see how that works. Let's walk around. You can see that it's better. It's better than what you find in when you're parachuting, the quality and the lagginess at least. So it's decent. And let's go in and see what we can find. Here we got some weapons. Let's pick them all up and start using it. I need to find a gun. There we go. Perfect, perfect. Now I can start shooting some people. It's going to be some fun times. Except I'm super bad at games, so there. Die! Let's see if we can find that guy. Nice, I killed somebody with an Uzi. That's great. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, so I gotta say the performance is okay. As you can see, there was a little bit of lag even when I was shooting that guy. So I will say that quality it isn't that great. And if you want to get this as a gaming phone, yeah, I don't recommend it because you probably need something like a Snapdragon 625. All right, in terms of network bands, let's check those out. The Bluboo S3 is actually pretty decent. I was not expecting this sort of network support. It's not great, but it's still pretty decent. For 2G, you got the whatever stuff, whatever. 3G, you have 850, which is important for 3G in Canada and the US, so that's good. 850, these two are for Europe. So you're going to get 3G in Canada and the USA. That's good. For LTE, let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. You got the almighty band 4, which means you're going to be able to get LTE on AT&T and T-Mobile. But again, be sure to check out cellmapper.net to make sure that you have these bands, specifically band 4 and band 5, especially for AT&T, around your area. Otherwise, this thing might not be the best idea. And of course, it's got band 17, 19, and 20, which is crucial for those who are in Europe. And here we have bands 38, 39, 40, 41, which makes it work in India also. In terms of speeds, it's decent. It's not that great. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth work. If we're talking about GPS, I found the GPS here to be not that great. I found the GPS to lose connectivity fairly often, and it would jump around also. So it's not the greatest, even for an MTK 6750. So that's something to be aware of if you want to buy this phone. All right, let's talk about the camera here. The camera is mixed at best. I will say that you can take pretty good photos with the camera, but they're not super common. So for example, if you look at some pictures, you'll see that some of them look pretty good, some of them don't look as good. But the one thing I noticed that the other reviewers didn't really mention is that sometimes when you take photos, you will notice that the quality of the photo is okay, but it almost seems like the camera lens is covered in fog. So that is something that really can impact your use of the camera, because even though it's you can take photos with decent detail, with some decent color reproduction, you will notice that there is like this weird layer of fog on some photos that don't appear all the time, but sometimes they do appear. So let's talk about the times when they don't appear. You can take some pretty good photos, especially macro shots. These macro shots actually look pretty good. You've got some pretty good color saturation, some pretty good detail as well. So you really can take good photos. And you can see that sometimes the camera does have trouble taking photos of fast-moving objects. For example, my dog is a little bit blurry sometimes. Sometimes it's not as blurry, so it's really dependent. The shutter speed is okay, but it's really not that fast. The other thing to note is that HDR works okay. It's not super amazing. I do notice that HDR sometimes washes out your photos, so that's something to be aware of as well. The camera quality for the front-facing camera is mixed. It can take good photos, I will admit that, the front-facing camera at least, but it takes bad photos more often than it takes good photos. You need to have like ideal lighting conditions and you're facing the right direction to get good photos, and bad photos are more common. If we're talking about low light, you get some pretty bad quality no matter what, so that's something to be aware of a lot of the time. Video quality here is not great. It's 1080p, and the quality hovers between 1080 and 720, at least how it looks, so that's something to be aware of as well. All right, let's talk about my overall thoughts for the Bluboo S3. This is a decent phone at best, and if you consider the price tag at about $170 not on sale, that's so if the Xiaomi Redmi Note 4 and Redmi 5 Plus did not exist, this would be a decent phone. But because those phones exist, the Redmi Note 4 for about $150, which is $20 cheaper than this, and the Redmi 5 Plus or Redmi Note 5, aka for about $170, which is the same price as this, you get an infinitely better phone than the Bluboo S3. You get similar battery life, which is quite a feat for those processors, the Snapdragon 625, and it's also more powerful, which means that you can play games a lot more effectively than you can on the Bluboo S3, and it doesn't even have a leg up in terms of network bands also, because this has about the same network bands as what you find on the Redmi 5 Plus, Redmi Note 4. So again, if you're considering this phone, I would highly recommend you consider the Redmi Note 4, Redmi 5 Plus, Redmi Note 5 instead of this phone. But if you do want to get this phone, you do get a decent phone. There are some areas where it makes it really iffy to buy it. For example, the camera, that's one area. The battery is good, but it's not good enough to justify how big the battery is, and the performance here is average at best. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Bluboo S3, and be sure to hit subscribe if you like this video, and hit the notification bell to make sure you're notified of any new videos that come out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.